We're from North Dakota, where 12,000 workers bring electricity to 2 million customers and provide over $5 billion in economic activity to the state, while reclaiming 22,000 acres of land. This is coal country.
Find out more at lignite.com/podcast. The voice for North Dakota coal.
Love staying informed? Subscribe now and get unlimited access to local news, weather, and sports for just 99 cents a month for your first 3 months at inforum.news/join. Read every story, listen to every podcast, and download the apps that keep you informed and on the go 24 hours a day. So head to inforum.news/join right now to subscribe. What are you waiting for? Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month at inforum.news/join.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right?
Hey, welcome to Plain Talk. It is the day the audience has been waiting for. Chad Oban is officially in the captain's seat for today's podcast with Jessica Bell as my co-host. Jessica, how are you today?
Hey, Chad. Good morning. I'm doing well today. It's Friday before a long weekend. We're all excited to be here. So
all excited to be here. Lots of hype about today's show. I don't know if you've been hearing the Oban bump, Jessica Bell boost that people have been talking about around the state, but it's palatable.
I can't keep track of all the messages. I mean, my phone's just been going just off the hook this week. So I am super excited to deliver to the people what they really want.
What they really want. I like the fact that you just used the term "off the hook." Today we are
1990 again.
Yeah, there you go. Our guest today is a friend of a longtime listener, I think first-time guest on the show, Matt Perdue, who's the Director of Government Relations at Farmers Union. Matt is also from Ray, North Dakota. One of his proudest accomplishments is being one of my top 25 Ray High School graduates. I'll name the first 24 if you want me to later. But Matt's running for president of North Dakota Farmers Union, which is a really consequential organization here in the state. And so we're going to talk to Matt about his run today, about Farmers Union, and how folks are feeling out in the fields as we're getting, I suppose, into planting at this point. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Chad. And as you know, listen to the show all the time. I think this, you being in the captain's seat is an interesting experiment. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, the one thing I appreciate about Matt being a longtime listener is he's not afraid to provide me with notes on things that I should be doing better in the future, which is nice of him.
I have backed off on that, though. There was like a period where every show I would send you suggestions and critiques. Now I only really follow up when you're like factually inaccurate. So
yeah, which doesn't happen very often. Anyway, Matt, you're running for North Dakota Farmers Union president. Tell us about North Dakota Farmers Union and why you're running for president.
So I am a fifth generation North Dakota Farmers Union member, very proud of the role that my family has played and the role that I have played in the organization. We are the largest general farm organization in the state of North Dakota. We represent farms and ranches of all types of sizes across the state. And Farmers Union is really built around three core principles: legislation, where I've spent a big chunk of my career, cooperation, and we continue to have strong relationships with farmer-owned co-ops across the state, and then education. And as you know, we have one of the state's largest youth camping programs in the summer. And so those three pillars are the pillars of the organization. They have been since my great-great-grandparents helped found their Farmers Union local. And from where I sit, I think they are the key pillars that we will organize around as we build the organization for the future.
Thank you for the background and the extra information. What are you looking forward to most during this little campaign season here for Farmers Union?
Yeah, well, so it's an interesting spot that I'm in right now because to run for president, I have to resign from my current post, and so that will happen at the end of June in accordance with the bylaws. I tell you what, I have had such a great time just having one-on-one conversations with our members across the state. Some of those over phone calls. Had supper with a couple members the other night at a local diner. And just hearing about the priorities for their operations, the priorities for their communities, and really learning from our members and getting to talk to them, as Matt Perdue, getting to sort of share my perspectives and my vision for the future. I think I think it's going to be so much fun to have 6-7 months here where my number one focus is just having those one-on-one conversations with members, and hearing where their priorities are, where their concerns are, and really building an organization that's strong for them in the future.
So, Matt, what are you hearing from those producers across the state? I mean, obviously, I think right now it's we didn't have enough rain, then it was too much rain. And so, but what are you hearing? What are their concerns? Are they nervous? Are they feeling optimistic? What are they thinking?
I think the biggest theme that I hear is uncertainty. And I think, we headed into this crop season, this growing season, with a lot of economic headwinds, low commodity prices, high input costs. And so the outlook for this year was always difficult. I think a lot of our members are very frustrated by the continued sort of partisan divide in Congress and the inability to get a farm bill done, even though we are facing these economic headwinds. There's a lot of uncertainty around trade, and I think we're grateful to see that the administration has sort of de-escalated some of those trade tensions, but now we're seeing this morning, maybe heightening concerns with the EU relationship. I guess we're going to tariff Apple iPhones, different things like that. And so agriculture is extremely vulnerable to the retaliatory tariffs from other countries. That's what we saw with the first U.S.-China trade war. That continues to be a concern for our producers. And so I think those two issues are really top of mind. They're obviously intertwined. We're talking a lot about the reconciliation package moving through Congress. But I also hear from producers that they're really optimistic. They're excited about the long-term future. I'm a young parent. I'm excited to see, my daughter grow up and play a key role in her community, wherever that ends up being. And I think a lot of our members really see Farmers Union as being key to building that future and continue to keep family farming strong, continue to keep our rural communities strong across the state.
Well, I really appreciate the focus on some of those federal issues because I think you're right. There are some really consequential, potentially damaging decisions being made short term here. But as you pointed out, long term, hopefully this sets up our country to be in a position where our kids can continue to participate in farming and ranching. I come from a family where my brother helps my dad with their over 500 head of cattle. They're super happy about the rain, but we did have to move branding from last Tuesday to next Tuesday. So, I think there's some excitement. I think there's some excitement in the cattle market too. And so all of those things hopefully are building to a really solid long-term future for our farming and ranching communities here in North Dakota. But let's take a look a little bit at the North Dakota legislative session. We just wrapped up the end of the session, and I know I saw you in the Capitol building quite a bit. What issues were Farmers Union focused on, and what are you most happy with as a result of the legislative session?
So our number one focus going into the session was property tax relief and reform. And we were really excited to see that be such a key focus during the legislative session. At the same time, a little disappointed that we didn't see some broad-based component to the final relief package. And so I think that's a conversation that we really see there's some unfinished business and a conversation that we need to continue as we look ahead to the 27 session. I think we had a great session on transportation infrastructure. The DOT budget came out in a really strong position. And I think one of the things that I'm excited about with the DOT budget is they use 2% of the legacy fund earnings, or really 25% of the total earnings that we generate from the legacy fund for transportation infrastructure. And so that's a stream that will continue to grow and address our backlog of maintenance needs on county, township, and city roads and bridges. I think value-added ag is always a big priority for us, and we saw some exciting development there, continued investment in our Ag Diversification Development Fund. This potato plant that's being talked about in Grand Forks, really putting a pretty nice investment out there for a project that has an excellent rate of return for the state of North Dakota and for North Dakota producers. So overall, I think it was a productive session. As you know, not every issue goes your way, not every vote goes your way. I think we do feel like we have some unfinished business, but overall, we got some good things done for rural North Dakota in the legislative session.
Hey, man, I want to talk about sort of the complications of being a farmer these days, because it's not just about, the putting a seed in the ground and selling a commodity, but now you're working on land owner rights issues regarding energy and those kind of things. I just read an article today about Governor Armstrong talking about hunting rights and access to land and that sort of relationship between sportsmen and farmers. And a lot of these are really, really complicated community issues. So what do you see Farmers Union and your members' roles in sort of, it's not just commodity prices, right? There's so many other complications out there. How do you work through all those complicated relationships?
I think the last word you said there is really key there, Chad, which is building strong relationships between industry and landowners. Obviously we farm up in Williams County. We have energy development all around us. We have figured out how to coexist with the energy industry, and they have figured out how to coexist with us. And I think we do that pretty well. That wasn't without growing pains. And so as we see development in other parts of the state, I think there really needs to be a strong focus on how we build better relationships and how we can help utility companies and energy developers, really start that relationship on the right foot, and help make them aware and make sure that they're being fair to those landowners. They're answering questions openly and honestly. They're building a strong relationship and contributing to that local community. And so we saw some legislation move through, some passed, some legislation that we opposed ultimately failed this session. And at the end of the session, a legislator that, we had some disagreements with on this issue, I think we had a great conversation about how, ultimately the best way to solve these problems is at the local level, right? And so we need to build healthier local conversations around these projects. And I think that means that, farmers and ranchers, obviously, they're going to care a lot about their rights as landowners. I think it means that we both just have to have good faith conversations. I never hear Farmers Union members saying, I am against development at all costs. I hear them say, I'm against this development because I don't feel like the project is treating me fairly, right? And that's a difference, that's a distinction, and that's something that we have to really be thoughtful about addressing at the local level moving forward.
I think it's a really interesting point to bring up because it was such a focus of the first half of the legislative session. And when you're talking about things like eminent domain and the ability to leverage that very, very powerful tool, I agree. Conversations can't kick off with, hey, you either sign this or I'm going to take it. That is no way to treat our farming and ranching communities. And I know companies are certainly seeing that, and I think taking steps in the right direction to reestablish those relationships. I know in 2015, I think it was, as you mentioned, the growing pains in the oil field, we had established as a legislature the pipeline ombudsman program, where the ag department actually had access to resources to help landowners participate in some of those really difficult conversations. And so I think we have done the best we can from a state perspective to try and provide those resources. But it also, that burden so frequently does fall on your members to represent themselves and to represent what it is that they're looking for specifically in those projects. So what are you hearing from your members on those future projects and future developments?
Well, I would just pair off what you just said there, Jessica, I think in the vast majority of cases, it is much more affordable for the project to get started off on the right foot with local landowners. And sometimes we see projects try to use sort of a heavy hand right up front, and it gets everybody scared, it gets everybody angry, and it ends up increasing the cost of completing that project for the developer. And so, again, just stressing how important it is we get those conversations started off right. I think when we talk about future development, I think it really varies on the community that you're in and the people that you're talking to. I think there are some corners of the state where folks are a little bit overwhelmed right now. They feel like there's a lot of energy development occurring in their area, and it's a little bit much for them. I think there are other areas of the state where people have, I guess they're a little bit calmer, a little bit more eager to embrace some new development. And I think it's okay for people to have different opinions on projects based on where they are. And so in my view, the role for an organization like ours is really I think we can do a better job of coming into those communities and having good faith conversations with the landowners, with the project, and really trying to facilitate a more meaningful exchange. Each community is different. Their needs are different. Each project is different. Their impact is going to be different. And so, I think it's important that we don't paint these things with a broad brush, but we recognize the unique circumstances and concerns of every community in our state.
So, Matt, I've seen you work on at the Capitol in an exceptionally effective bipartisan way on a variety of different issues. And I think one of the things when people hear North Dakota Farmers Union, they don't think about, part of your goal as an organization is to prop up rural North Dakota. It's not just for the people who are producing, but part of that is having young producers. In order to have young producers, you need childcare, you need good schools, you need all those kind of things. Can you talk about the work that you've done, what Farmers Union is looking for in order to, particularly childcare? You mentioned that you have a young daughter. In a lot of these communities, I work for the teachers union. There's teachers who drive 60 miles to bring their kid to childcare and then go to work. That's a tough way to keep things going. So some of those maybe non-producer issues that really affect people's livelihood in rural areas. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And this session was actually a lot of fun for me because, our members really pushed us.
So hold on. You're the one who thought this session was fun. Okay, we had one person.
We found him.
Some elements of this session were a lot of fun for me. But last winter, our members passed a special order of business outlining our priorities for the session, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to see a stronger focus on rural community development and quality of life." And so we worked really closely with rural development stakeholders, the regional councils across the state, to provide some funding to help get small business and rural quality of life projects started out. Ultimately, it's $2.5 million or $2 million in funding. I can't remember exactly where that one landed, but a small amount of funding. But I think it's a really nice place to start. You're right, Chad. To get the next generation on the farm, they need the economic opportunity, right? The farm needs to make money for them. But to get them back to that small community, that rural community, you need to have opportunities for them. You likely need an off-farm job, maybe for the farmer themselves, maybe for their spouse. You need to have a good school system for their children. You need to be able to buy groceries and access health care and find affordable childcare in that community. And so when we talk about the next generation of family farmers and ranchers, rural quality of life is central to that. It's a core element, and I think it's one that sometimes we take for granted or we overlook because we're so focused on the economics of agriculture, and that's just part of the story in my view.
Well, you mentioned economics, and it immediately makes me think of land prices. And I'm wondering if you're hearing from your members about what those land prices are looking like, how they're feeling about their property taxes, and if, there's maybe some inundation from out-of-state landowners coming in trying to purchase land. Is that a concern that you're hearing from your members?
Land prices are always too high, right?
Yeah.
If you're buying land. But yeah, I mean, we have seen sort of the steady march towards increased land prices. They seem to go up every single year, whether or not farmers are making money in that year. And so that's a big concern. Obviously, part of that concern is out-of-state landowners coming in and bidding up that land. People who are never going to live in that community, people who are never going to work that land, never contribute locally, but they're owning a piece of property there. And then I think we also hear concerns about the absentee landowners who, maybe dad or grandpa farmed, and now I own the land and I live in California, right? And I think my focus and our focus is really on figuring out ways to provide a strong transition, whether it's within the family or to a member of another family, a young farmer from another family, really provide that transition. And sometimes that comes with the understanding that, I may not be able to get top dollar for this land. I personally have bid on land, had failed bids on land several times, have tried to rent land several times. That goes to, a large operation that is not local, right? And that's really frustrating. It's more frustrating as a young farmer to go into the coffee shop and hear some of the older farmers complain about how young people don't want to work these days. It's like, I want to work, but I can't buy land with a 50-year rate of return. I mean, it just doesn't work for me. And so we have to figure out how to grab people at that moment of transition, whether it means you're retiring or it means that you're the young farmer trying to grow, and really help them understand the value of making that exchange to somebody who lives locally, who's invested in the community, and who's going to be a good steward of that resource for decades, generations to come.
Man, I don't think I could go home if I conducted this interview and didn't ask you about Farmers Union Camp in some way. At our house, my wife Erin is counting down the moments until Evan gets to go to Farmers Union Camp. But can you talk about, again, I think that's a story that's not told enough about what Farmers Union does to not only give kids an activity, but to teach them about where their food comes from and those kind of things. So can you talk about the cult that is the Farmers Union Camp and the people who are counselors at that thing?
So, yeah, I mean, we're very proud of our camping program. I went to camp and through all of my youth years, I was a Farmers Union torchbearer. I went to all states camp. I did all the stuff, right? My mother was a county youth leader. Farmers Union Camp is a great experience. It's a lot of fun for the kids that go. We have over 1,200 kids. Expect to have over 1,200 kids go to camp this year, and we're hoping to grow that number. We have two sites, one at Lake Chida in the southwest corner of the state, one at Jamestown now. Very excited to have that new state-of-the-art facility. It's a great experience for the kids. When I was a kid, it was a great opportunity to meet people from across the state, to go to camp with a bunch of kids from Napoleon, which is 4 hours away, and have a great time and have lifelong friendships. It's also a great learning opportunity. We teach kids about the value of being involved in their local community, particularly being involved in their local cooperatives. And we're really helping develop future community leaders, future co-op leaders for our state. And again, the kids have a lot of fun along the way. They build lifelong friendships. Erin was one of my camp counselors, as you know, Chad. And
I believe she also babysat you. I mean,
That's so fun. I love
but
that.
when I made my announcement last week that I was running for NDFU president, the number of camp friends, Farmers Union camp friends, that just streamed out online was just awesome. And it was great to reconnect with some of those folks who I haven't talked to in years.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know some kids that have gone to Farmers Union Camp and just loved it. So that's really, really great to hear about those friendships lasting well into adulthood. That is super, super fun. Well, I think as we're getting close to our time here, I think I'll ask if there's anything that we didn't ask that you wanted to talk about today.
Anything you didn't ask? I mean, I think, as a candidate for NDFU president, I think, I find myself in a really unique position. I grew up on our family farm, 3.5 miles west of Ray. And I grew up in the same yard as my great-grandparents, where my grandpa was born in 1916, grandma was born in 1920. People who came through the Great Depression, who were there in the early days, the establishment of North Dakota Farmers Union, who really believed in those core principles of cooperation, education, and legislation. And so they really instilled in me at a very young age the values of this organization, the values of being a good neighbor, looking out for people in your community. I'm also a young parent, right? And I am, I think all the time about, it's sort of a bummer that my daughter will never get to meet my great-grandparents, right? Because they had such a big impact on my life. And I really view it as my responsibility to make sure she understands and knows and lives the values that they instilled in me, right? And that's really about the legacy of family farming. It's about the legacy of our organization. It's about each generation having a responsibility to connect the past to the future. And that's what I'm really excited about when I look to this campaign, and when I look to the prospect of sitting in that chair one day and being the NDFU president, is really connecting those values and bringing them forward for future generations.
Matt, can you talk a little bit about the process? Who votes on this? Where can they find more information? That type of thing. And then I have a final question that I think I'm going to stump you.
Okay. So we, through our system, our structure, we have an organization in almost every county in the state. They will hold county conventions in the fall. Those counties will elect delegates to attend the state convention, who will ultimately vote on behalf of the members in that county. To be a voting delegate, you have to be a Farmers Union member, and you have to be a farmer, rancher, or retired farmer or rancher. And so really the focus here is getting people to show up at those county conventions, getting them to throw their name in the hat to be a delegate at the state convention. And from my perspective, just having good conversations with people about where they see the future of the organization, the future of family farming, the future of our rural communities.
Matt, final question. Will you sing the Union Farmer song as we close out here?
It is the Union button. And I will not subject your listeners to that. But yes, that age-old Farmers Union song. Used to sing it at convention all the time. We don't anymore. But certainly a favorite at camp. So I'm not going to sing it, Chad. Thanks.
Missed opportunities. All right. Thanks, Matt. Good conversation. You're up to number 23 now in my book of Ray ads. Go Ray Jays.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
We're from North Dakota, where 12,000 workers bring electricity to 2 million customers and provide over $5 billion in economic activity to the state, while reclaiming 22,000 acres of land. This is coal country.
Find out more at lignite.com/podcast. The voice for North Dakota coal.
Hey friends, we've got a new way for you to participate in the show. You can now call us or text us with your questions, comments, or anything you want us to discuss on Plain Talk. Just give us a call or shoot us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. It's super easy. Leave your message, tell us your name and where you're from, and we might feature it on an upcoming episode.
Thanks for listening to Plain Talk. Now let's get back to today's episode. Hey, welcome back to the second half of Plain Talk. We just finished up our interview with Matt Perdue, who's the Director of Government Relations at Farmers Union, hoping to be the next president of Farmers Union. Jessica, I thought that was he knows his stuff. I mean, I don't know if listeners can tell that he's not that old. He's a young guy who knows his stuff.
I feel like you just called me old, which is probably actually appropriate here, but you are definitely older than me.
Yeah, that's I would never call you old because you're substantially younger than I am.
But Matt's such a good dude. Like, I saw him walk out of the Capitol one day. I was going to my car. He was going to his car. He had his wife and at least one of their children with them. And we had just a lovely interaction. And he's just so knowledgeable. He was giving me chills there at the end when he was doing his real pitch for the spot. I was like, yes, this is what I want for our farming and ranching community to live on with the next generation and remembering old generations. Like, ugh.
And what I like about Matt is he can bring people together, right? I mean, I've seen him having conversations with conservative Republicans and progressive Democrats and talking about, not from a political point of view, but what do our rural communities need? He's not talking about childcare because he thinks a bunch of people should get subsidies. He's talking about childcare because he wants people to live in these rural communities so farming and ranching has a future in the state. I think it's important.
Well, it is important. And Farmers Union has been such a steadfast, reliable voice, especially in the halls of the North Dakota legislature, because some of the other farming and ranching groups have just not been able to be nearly as effective as Matt has because of his approach of coalition building and talking to everybody. And that's really important because without those voices for agriculture, there was also a creation of an ag caucus. I can't remember what they called it, but
I think it's a rural caucus.
Rural caucus. Yes, yeah. A rural caucus this session, which I thought was super, super awesome. So I think Matt's involvement in these issues has actually helped form things like the rural caucus to have additional advocates for our rural residents in North Dakota. And that's awesome.
Yeah, I do think you're right.
I mean, I think it's cool.
Yeah. As some of the other farm groups maybe are getting a little more partisan, I think Farmers Union's actually doing something different. They're becoming less partisan, more. I mean, they've never been partisan. Maybe it's not partisan. Maybe it's ideological. Like they want to bring people together. And I think some of the other ag groups feel like they're getting a little more flamethrowery and a little bit more ideological as we move forward.
Yeah, I see that Farmers Union has stepped up to the plate here and said, okay, I'll be the adult in the room. Let's talk about this. And that's what we need more of across the board.
Right. So we got a couple of big things to talk about. There was a snafu with the latest round of governor's vetoes to catch people up. Governor Armstrong did a line item vetoes in a series of different bills, all of which I'm sure he hates when I say this, but I agreed with all of them. In one of them, a housing bill, he tried, in his veto letter, he referenced cutting $150,000 for one-time funding for a specific cause. But then what I described as the artwork, what they actually, sent over of what they crossed out a whole section of the bill, which includes $35 million in housing, which is causing some problems. I mean, he's asked the Attorney General to give an interpretation if the artwork or the letter supersedes. And if not, I think might be seeing our legislators back in Bismarck, either at his call or the legislative call. Jessica, we talked a little bit about this last night. This feels like the first time maybe the Armstrong administration was showing their I don't want to say youthfulness, but it feels like one of their first mistakes they've made since Kelly got elected. They had a great session. This is a bit of a screw up.
Yeah, I think we could call it a mistake, which feels a little harsh. These are all people that I know and have worked with, but they are almost all new to the office. And I think it's okay for us to make mistakes and to own those and to find a path forward. And I think that's what the governor's office is doing here, working with Leg Council, working with the Attorney General's office to figure out what the best approach is. And I think typically how the vetoes have been interpreted in other states when things like this have happened, because this is certainly not breaking new ground here. This has happened a million times, that veto message will likely prevail in whatever way they find to move forward. And I think that's the focus now, and the proper focus is to just find whatever that best path forward is, to not spend taxpayer dollars to remedy the situation. But I think the veto was a good veto. It's basically dollars for an FTE for a nonprofit private organization. And I have long been an advocate of not allocating or directing nonprofit organizations in the Century Code. So I'm confident they'll be able to figure this out in a way that works for everybody. But, if not, back to a special session quick and get it wrapped up.
Yeah, you mentioned that this is not unique. I literally read a national article yesterday that talked about this snafu, in the same article referring to a screw up by the Nebraska governor who missed a deadline on a veto, and that's a guy who's been in office for some time. I will say there is a bit of I don't want to know, maybe irony, but in the very week that Kelly was sort of slapping the legislature for not investing enough in housing, this took place where he accidentally vetoed all the money they put in housing. I would not have wanted to be in Kelly's office the last 24 hours or 48 hours. I mean, he has great staff, but he also has high expectations for those staff.
Yeah, he certainly does, and rightfully so. They're doing the work of the people, and that is a very, very serious job. It is ironic, and I get the giggles occasionally when thinking about that program, because I know it was one of his initiatives that he really wanted, being the one that ends up getting vetoed. But if we can't laugh at ourselves, then I think we're doing it wrong. So
Right.
I'll let myself get the giggles occasionally over it.
So I think, ideally, the way this plays out is the Attorney General gives an opinion that says the veto message does override the artwork. But, Port wrote a column expressing some level of concern that if the legislature does come back, they might try to override some of these other vetoes or do other things. I can't imagine the legislature wants to stick around any longer than they actually have to after this long session. But what's your take if they do come back? Do you think they'll just get to business, or do you think they'll mess around with other things as well?
Well, I think it depends on the approach that they take when they come back. If they call themselves back, they're burning their days that they tried very hard to save, which I have to say I'm super impressed with, because going into the last couple weeks of session, I thought there was no way on God's green earth they weren't going to day 80. So it depends on whether or not they're using their own days, or if the governor calls them back, and if they decide to address this issue with a veto override, or because that takes 2/3 of a vote, or if it's a new bill, which is a process that takes a little bit longer. So if they're there for 3 days, you can guarantee they're going to be addressing a few other things.
Yeah, you brought up the end of the session, and it sort of, I too am impressed that they were able to keep as many days as they were able to. I'm very nervous about sort of the federal cuts that are coming down and what those look like in terms of the state budgets, right? A lot of the times, and a lot of the cuts that we're looking at in Washington, sometimes they'll say, well, this should be a state's thing, so therefore the state should cover it. Well, we're still paying for that. So do you think, let's move away from this veto. Do you think the legislature, there's a possibility the legislature has to come in to deal? We talked a lot about the lagoon in Fezzen and some of those kind of things. Do you think the legislature will have the appetite to come back and fill some holes if they need to?
Well, they were pretty clear that was the reason that they were saving days. And I understand, as a former legislator, wanting to retain that ability to call yourselves back to address any holes there might be as the federal government works through the issues. But I also have to believe that our governor would be in a position where he would want the legislature to come back to fill holes for these
Right.
communities as they're running into deficits or other issues, because we want our state to be successful. So I think it's wise they left some days, but even if they hadn't, we would still be in a position, I think, that the governor would call them back to address some of those.
So something else just popped in my head, Jessica. I'm sorry, I'm going completely off script, but I'm in the captain's seat today, so I'm going to drive
You
this.
are. I like it.
So I thought quite a few times about you during this last session.
Uh-oh.
And not in the policy versus appropriations disagreements. Because I remember when you were chair of Senate Finance and Tax, you being on the floor a couple times expressing frustrations around, what are we doing here? I felt like that sort of frustration was on steroids this session. First of all, do you think it is getting worse? Is it?
It absolutely is getting worse. Like,
So
you
what-
want to fire me up, you talk about this issue.
So what can be done about it, though? I mean, because again, I watched the sessions. Like, what the hell's the point of the policy committees? They sit days after days after days working on these things, and then a 15-minute hearing on appropriations, and they undo a bunch of stuff.
What can be done? There are so many different things that I think can be done, but just to explain why I was always so frustrated with it is because it makes that policy vulnerable. One, it's not fully vetted, because if you're not running everything through a policy committee, you have appropriators who have a different big job to do, appropriating the dollars, not having the time to dig into policy issues. So you've got an unvetted policy issue that then is vulnerable to being line item vetoed because it's in a budget. And so that's just not how we in North Dakota create policy. If we wanted to move to something like the Minnesota legislature does and have a large omnibus bill that includes all of the things, we could do it that way, but that's not how we operate in North Dakota. And every bill, gets a hearing, gets a vote on the floor. And that piece is so important. So fundamentally to me, I really love the way our and it's annoying. It's frustrating. It's awful at times, especially when you're in the policy committees, but it's so important. That process is so important. So when you're bypassing that, it's just fundamentally wrong from my perspective. Although Senator Sorvag would be the first to call me out on my bullshit, because I would then at the end of session go, oops, sorry.
Oh, by the way,
on something. Can you put this in a budget bill? So everyone's a hypocrite in that process, but I think fundamentally keeping your focus on how the process should work should be priority. And then how do you change it? Gotta have strong chairmen in those policy committees. And we see some strong chairmen in policy committees. We see some committees that didn't have as strong of leadership and got railroaded a little bit this session. And that's hard for me to watch. That all stems from leadership and term limits and all of leadership making those choices, term limits, really limiting your pool of candidates who are going to be a strong leader on a certain policy topic. So it's a complicated thing. I could drone on for hours, obviously.
I always get a kick on appropriations when they'll say, well, we don't do policy here because they don't want to do policy, when 5 minutes previously they did policy on something they did want to do, depending on who it is there. So would you be an advocate for being able to kill bills in committee?
Well, I guess it depends on what seat I'm in, right?
Well, it depends on what bill it is as well.
And what bill it is. And
I bring that up because I bring that up because how many times have you seen a committee will spend days and days and days getting this bill, give it a 2, a 1 to 4 do not pass, and then it passes on the floor after a 5-minute debate. And it's like, well, what's the point of the committee doing all this work saying it's not a good bill if you're just going to pass it on the floor anyway? It drives me nuts, and it feels like we could be more efficient if we gave more power to the committees.
We could absolutely be more efficient there, and we could get rid of a lot of crappy things that people, quite frankly, don't want to vote on, because there are certainly efforts from, I would say, both wings, both far right and far left wings of the party, who like to put a bill in to put it in front of everybody so they've got a record voting on some, inconsequential issue that is super, super polarizing, so that in the next election cycle, they can say, well, and they did it to me in District 33 when I ran in 2022. She didn't vote for this gun bill. I'm like, well, that language got put in a different bill, and it's, that all gets super complicated. But also on the flip side, back to that process. I like the process. It is obnoxious sometimes, and the outcome, but going through those motions, I think, makes our government more transparent. And I really like that. So I don't think I would be an advocate for it, although it would have been nice as a chairman, certainly. I think it's better for it to go through the whole process. I also don't like the limiting bills concept for legislators.
That surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you've got 15 things that you want to introduce. What if you're limited at 8? I mean, maybe then you're better at building a coalition. Maybe you're more focused. Maybe those things are all true, but especially with term limits, like, I don't know.
Jessica, maybe you can find a friend
done.
to introduce the other 7 bills on your behalf.
Yeah, well, that would help with the coalition building part, wouldn't it?
Yeah. There you go. Speaking of terrible processes, do you want to talk about Washington a little bit?
Oh, do I want to?
Yeah.
No. Is it a terrible process? Yes.
Yeah. So we saw the House passed a big, beautiful bill. I will agree it's big. I'm not so sure I agree on the beautiful part of it. It is over 1,000 pages. It's super complicated. I think if anybody says they like everything or hate everything in the bill, they're full of it, because there's stuff to like and there's stuff to hate. What's your take on doing bills this way? I mean, you got this huge tax cut continuation. You've got all these different cuts. I mean, like, it just feels like it's too big. And then you have this weird negotiation at the end, and God, more power to Mike Johnson for figuring out how to pass this thing from just a political science point of view. I don't know how he got there, but he got there. But, the moderates...
Just Mike Johnson for a second, like, crazy that he was the one that ended up with the job in the first place.
Crazy, right.
Nobody saw him coming. And he's so cute. Like, I just want to pinch his cheeks, which is maybe inappropriate. I don't know. But he just seems magical because he does somehow, he's getting everybody in line. I'm sure Trump is helping behind the scenes.
Sure.
But I don't know how long that will last if you're constantly pushing. Traditionally, that stops working at some point, but it seems to be working now.
Well, and don't you think, and when we interviewed Julie Fedorchuk a couple of weeks ago, I mean, she was confident this was going to pass. And I mean, essentially, and maybe, I can't remember if we're on air or off air when we talked about this, is the Republicans have a trifecta. If they can't do this, then what's the point of the Republicans having a trifecta? And I think there is a little bit of that. Like, we've got it. We said we're going to do these things. We have to do these things.
Well, and so I'll go back to the initial question you asked, which was, what do I think about this process with this big, beautiful bill? And I say, we've been asking Congress to do their job for a really long time. There's been a lot of kicking the can. There's been a lot of difficult decisions that have been pushed down the road, not been made, and so much money thrown out into our economy. Inflation is up. I mean, all of those things are true because we were all so frustrated with how Congress was not doing their job. They're doing it here. And while I don't like all of the provisions, I don't like some of the proposals that actually increase the debt, which you and I have chatted about. I don't like that piece, but I do like that we're having very transparent and open conversations about each of these issues. And I'm following this more than I ever have had to previously. And it's actually really easy to find out information that's going on in the committees. And I really like that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when it gets kicked over to the Senate, because that's a whole different ballgame over there. But
it's a whole different ballgame. And I would push back a little bit on transparent. I mean, when you have 1,000 bills and it's changing, from one meeting to the next meeting on what exactly is in there and not, it's still, we're not talking about a bill in the North Dakota legislature in terms of transparency. It's still a big deal.
Well, no.
We did talk about the deficit. I mean, I get a little frustrated with Republicans often talking about deficit. Biden created this deficit. We know there's a lot of blame to go around when it comes to the deficit. This bill is, nonpartisan sources going to add, $2 trillion, over $3 trillion, maybe over the next 10 years. What happened to the fiscal responsibility party? I mean, like, we can't just continue to add these trillions of dollars. You can't. Julie Fedorchak said we can't tax our way out of this. Well, I'd also say we can't just tax cut our way out of this and Medicaid cut our way out of this either. I mean, it doesn't feel like we're having real conversations where both parties are involved. And part of that's because the Republican Party can't even agree on what it looks like from the very conservative to the moderate folks. Like, we don't have you and I aren't going to have an answer here on how to solve the budget deficit. But are you frustrated I mean, again, this is a big, beautiful bill. This is an opportunity. And we passed a bunch of tax cuts. Some of them I agree with. Some of them I don't agree with. Like, how do we get our hands around this?
Well, I think we take it one step at a time. And yes, of course, I'm frustrated. There are so many things in the bill that I'm frustrated with. And I think they say that when everybody's pissed, then we've finally found the right solution. I'm sure that that's the case here. But I'm trying to be patient with the process too. I don't like that big price tag because I truly believe what we talked about with Matt earlier and making sure that we're setting up the next generation for success here in America. And I think there are a million ways for us to do that. One is to reduce our debt, and the other is to reduce our taxes so that we can kind of reinstill American prosperity here in this country. I have serious concerns about where we're getting our critical minerals from, how we're obtaining our oil and gas supply, and how our gas supply is being distributed to the rest of the world. All of those different pieces coming together to create a puzzle that all the pieces fit in. And I think those tax cuts, for me, are one of the biggest pieces of that puzzle. Extending those Trump tax cuts are really, really important to everyday families. And while long term, right now, that looks like it's going to cause us a little more debt, I'm hopeful that we'll find a way to reduce that.
Yeah, I think that, I think, again, with the Trump tax cuts, I think there's good things and there's bad things. I think we could have extended the tax cuts that help everyday Americans without continuing the tax cuts for billionaires. I mean, I think there were different parts of this we could have taken. We could have.
Those billionaires create all sorts of new opportunities for regular Americans, though. And I'm a proponent of a flat tax, so we're definitely going to be on opposite sides of that one. I have no doubt. But that's the wonderful part of our democracy, is that we each get to have very different perspectives on what those tax structures look like. And neither of us are in charge to actually make the decision on them.
Right.
But
what my concern on this is, the CBO did say the lowest income household in the U.S. will see their resources drop, and the highest incomes will see their incomes boosted. I think we've got that flipped upside down. I don't think people should be paying over what they owe in taxes, but to give Bill Gates another tax break while somebody's losing their Medicaid because of caps, I think we've got that flipped upside down. Again, it's a big, big bill. We're not going to solve it. I want to ask you, we're running up against the clock. Superintendent Basler yesterday got through committee on a partisan vote. By the way, I don't understand why everything has to be a partisan vote. Democrats should have voted for Kirsten Basler yesterday on committee. But it sounds like that's moving fast. Kelly Armstrong's going to be able to appoint the next superintendent of public instruction whenever that takes place. You know the governor very well. What do you think he's looking for? I mean, you said something really interesting to me yesterday, that Kelly is a way of setting people up for success, or making sure that they're set up in a way that they won't fail. And I think that's an interesting perspective. Can you talk a little bit about how do you expect the governor to handle this?
I expect him to handle it like he's already gone through this appointment process, right? Jill Kringstad was appointed as public service commissioner shortly after Governor Armstrong came into office. That was a very transparent process. A lot of people were encouraged to apply for the position. I expect to see a very similar approach here. As many applicants as possible, and his team will go through all of them one by one to make sure that whoever that candidate is can actually be a candidate, right? Because not only are they going to have to coalition build once they're in the job, but they are going to have to campaign in the upcoming cycle, and then they're going to have to campaign again statewide 2 years from then. So they'll have 2 election cycles coming up in an environment that is not super friendly to somebody who likes to advocate for education. Now, and I'm sure you have thoughts on that. It's hard out there right now.
It is hard out there, but it's a super minority or a vocal minority, right? I think by and large, advocating for public schools is a winning political position. Every poll that I've ever seen, but it's hard. It is hard, and especially
in the North Dakota primary.
Yeah, that's exact. And if you go to a state convention, I mean, that's a really, really hard environment. And Baszler found that last time that it was really, really difficult.
Yeah, I was there at state convention, and it was rough. It was brutal, and the primary was no fun. And this is kind of that part of the job is really important, and very, very little fun. No fun.
Right.
Zero fun, sir.
And I think it's, you saying that, you need to be somebody who can run a campaign. I mean, twice in 4 years is hard, but also somebody who can do the job competently, which is also hard. I mean, those are often very, very different skill sets. And I mean, we're lucky that we have some statewide elected officials that have both of those skill sets to be able to run an agency and be a candidate at the same time. But I'm confident that Kelly is going to make a good pick, because the other thing about this, he has to own it, right? If this person flops or loses or whatever, this is Kelly Armstrong, Superintendent of Public Instruction. He's not going to want to, he's going to put somebody he trusts in that position and somebody he can get behind.
Yeah, well, that's the power of the governor's office, right?
Yeah.
And the responsibility all in one. That goes across the board for whether it's one of his cabinet choices or a position like this for a statewide elected office. I pray all the time that those decisions are wise ones and that the state continues to head in the direction that he wants under his leadership. And so far, great job. One snafu with a veto isn't going to derail my my support for the great work that office is doing. So
yeah, again, I agree 100%. I think the office had an incredibly good session. They said what they were going to do, and they did it. This one mistake, notwithstanding. I mean, here's the deal: in a month, we're going to forget about this, right? I mean, that's just the way this kind of works. It's embarrassing and all those kind of things, but it will get to a good place. Well, Jessica, we did it. We made it through an episode of Plain Talk.
Are we going to put a pin in it?
We should totally put a pin in it.
Yes.
So just a reminder for folks, Rob is on vacation again today, and next week he'll be on vacation again. I mean, this guy's vacationing just constant.
I'm on vacation. I never get vacation.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you guys are always like, "Oh, can you fill in while we're on vacation?" I'm like, "Well, I don't get any vacation."
In Rob's defense, he was last night at an Evening with Rob Port with Prairie Public, which I heard went very well. And Rob does deserve a vacation next week after the session.
I suppose.
Well, yeah, but the only reason I bring up his vacations is that guy, every time I miss one of these things for work, he's acting like I'm on a beach somewhere. But I will say next week, I'm going to be on a beach somewhere on a little family vacation. Looking forward to that.
Wait. They're baseball. I mean, we have to talk a little bit of baseball every episode of Plain Talk, right? There was a series with the
Dodgers I know where this is going.
And the Angels, was it last weekend? And series 3. And who won those games again? Was it
the fact that you're getting talking points from Michael here is just offensive. Here's what I'll say about that series. I mean, when the Dodgers are consistently playing really good teams, and then you're bound to have a letdown against a franchise as pathetic as the Angels periodically and let your guard down. But yeah, Michael, they did win 3-0. Congratulations. Good luck with your 4th place finish in the AL West. Well, that was really well played.
Now you're starting to sound like me when I'm talking to him about baseball. So
yeah. All right. So next couple weeks, I think we're going to have some one fresh episode coming up. Rob and I keynoted a panel with the North Dakota Professional Communicators up in Minot a couple weeks ago. We're going to play that Q&A and our conversation there. Hopefully we don't say anything too offensive, because I think we forgot we're being recorded several times. And then we're going to have a couple episodes, including, so Rob put together the best of episodes for the legislative session he and Matt Fern did. And one of them was when I was on vacation. I don't know if I should be offended by that or what, but you can re-listen to Rob and Aaron Oban interview Drew Wrigley during the session, which was one of the more exciting episodes. So again, thank you, Jessica, for joining us. Thank you for everybody for listening. Hopefully another time we'll be able to do the Bell Oban boost and bump together if we have the bandwidth.
I'm in.
You're in. All right. Thank you, Jessica. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a good one.
That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
He's so cute. I just want to pinch his cheeks.